Okay, so welcome back, friends. As we talked about, huh? So as we have talked about before, today is the day we'll be talking about the paper two strategy, and we have with us Naman and Pratik, who have secured very good marks in geography as well as ranks, and definitely they'll be sharing their story, and we will also look into their specific preparations. They will share preparation with respect to both of the papers, but with paper two, I would like them to emphasize, because as we know that in recent times in the examination, paper two has been playing a very crucial role, and nobody can be more aware than Naman here, because if you ask him, in 2020 he just scored 78 marks in paper 2, and this year he has almost near about doubled his marks, and he has got uh, 132 132 marks in paper 2. So a very strong jump, and definitely I would also like to hear what specifically he did, because this year also we see that there were many students who essentially have got good scores in paper 1, but their paper 2 scores were so much low that overall they were not able to score very high in geography. Like, I have met three students who have scored 148, two of them, and one of them 149 in paper 1. But when we are talking about paper 2, one of them has scored 96 marks, another has scored I think 79, and one of them has scored 78 marks. So a very huge variation. And we also know that with time, what has happened, as UPSC papers has been changing, there has been more and more general papers which are being asked in paper 2. So all these we will be talking about. I'll also give my views, what is to be done, how it is to be done. But just before that, let us welcome both of our guests of honor, because essentially they have definitely honored us through getting so much good ranks and marks in the examination. So I'll ask them to come here on the stage, and then we'll further the conversation. That is and to Pratik also. तो
इसको नीचे कर
खाई
दीजिए
लेते हैं आप, ऑल्दो मेरे को शुगर है, बट
आपको आप भी खाइए सर।
Okay, so let us carry on our conversation. So first, I would ask Naman to share some of the thoughts what he did, because he has not only secured very good marks in geography, he's also secured rank 30 this year. So which is, as you can understand, a dream for most of you who are preparing. And without any further delays, I'll ask Naman to share his views, what he did, and his experience mainly about the UPSC preparation first. Hmm.
Hello everyone. I am Naman Goel. I've done my graduation in BTech Chemical Engineering from IIT Bombay, and I passed out in 2020. This was my second attempt at UPSC. In my first attempt, I reached till the main stage and could not clear it. So, talking about my journey, I started preparing in 2020, January of 2020, and I gave the prelims of October 2020, cleared it, got good marks 123, and then gave the mains examination. Could not clear it, got 716 marks while the cutoff was 736. So the reason why I could not clear the mains that year was probably low marks in geography optional. I realized that I had to work in improving my geography optional. I gave wholeheartedly 3-4 months after my mains for preparing and consolidating my optional notes and strategy. I was pretty confident after that I have improved significantly in terms of my content, my answer writing, my presentation skills in geography, and this time I was confident that definitely I'll improve marks because, as sir said, I got 208 total in 2020 attempt, and now it's 272. So it's a jump of around 64 marks, and I think many people I see are struggling with constant marks in geography optional, and we are here to help you in increasing your marks and to ensure that in the very first attempt you get very good marks in geography optional. So this was my brief strategy, my brief background.
Okay. So, Naman, you talked about that you essentially got almost more than 60 marks jump. So, what essentially, as you said, in the second attempt, you were comparatively more confident with respect to your optional geography optional. So, what was basically you did in the meantime, which you prepared and you became it essentially confident? Mm.
Uh, After my mains of 2020, I realized that I was lacking in a few aspects in geography optional. Number one was I did not have consolidated notes for all the topics of paper one and paper two. So the first thing which I did was prepare notes, and my idea of preparing notes was to have 2-3 pages of notes for each and every word written or each and every topic written in the syllabus. For example, especially if we take uh, human geography section or Indian geography section, there are syllabus topics, and the questions are always almost always asked from the syllabus topics. So prepare a few pages of notes from that, and I prepared the notes from sir's notes, sir's foundation classes notes, and my own notes. I used to read it every time. So number one was preparing notes. Second was to enrich and value add those notes, because if we write the same thing which every other person is writing, then we'll get good marks but not high marks. So for that, I used to make sure that I include maps, case studies, theories, perspectives, examples, diagrams, whatever possible of that particular topic into my notes. So my notes will be consolidated, and I will have 3-4 pages of notes on each and every small topic given in the syllabus, and in that I will have everything which I can write in the examination. So my idea was to prepare very good notes, and secondly, I was also lacking in answer writing, especially in paper 2. So I joined sir's test series and write many papers. I also wrote previous year questions. I wrote sir's test series of paper 1, paper 2 both, and that significantly helped me maintain my time management in the paper. Include all practice for including maps, diagrams, perspectives, theories in my answers. and for ensuring that my answers look geographical. Because the one biggest mistake I was doing while in 2020 attempt was I was writing a GS kind of answer in a paper 2 of geography optional, in which you are almost sure to lose marks, because if you write GS1 type of answer, GS1 geography type of answers in geography optional, then you won't get as good marks as other people are writing. So for that, you need to have that idea of how to write a good geographical answers, and that can only come through practice. So I used to practice a lot of answer writing, in which I made sure that my answers are have a regional approach. Because if your answer of geography optional do not have a regional approach, then the examiner would not give you marks. So these were the few things that I did after my 2020 mains.
Okay. You talked about the making of the notes, and in those notes, like I also always tell students the same thing which you are telling. And here I would ask you one question. You talked about that you made lots of diagrams and case studies, examples, with also linking with the theory. So my question to you is that did you do these things a lot before the examination? Into did you incorporate all these things into your notes, and then you replicated just that in the examination, or it came naturally to you in the examination?
I incorporated each of these things in my notes. For example, I remember this year there was a question on border dispute of states, or there was a question on coal reserves in India. Uh, there were many such questions. So I already had notes on those topics. I had made diagrams, facts, maps, perspectives, theories, whatever is required. I've written in the notes. I have to just replicate them in the actual examination paper. So my idea was to have my notes holistic and well consolidated. So each and every part which is required to be written in the answer is already there in the notes. Because if you don't have them in the notes, then you probably won't be recalling that in the actual examination. It becomes very difficult to write. So have everything in your notes, revise them multiple times, and then it will come naturally while you write answers. So that is required.
Why I ask this question again? Because this is one of the things which I really believe is very, very important. Because what happens is many times, and actually it is with so many students, they tend to daydream. Daydreaming में ज़्यादा time चला जाता है. And suppose if I am also teaching in the class same thing, and I am telling that you have to do this, you have to do this, what most of the students would do, they would postpone it. They will not actually practice it. They will think कि हम एग्जाम में जाएंगे और वहां पर हो जाएगा, कर लेंगे. Diagrams बोला जा रहा है कि you practice the diagrams. I have given so many examples starting from 2017 toppers who made their diagram copies, separate diagram copies उन्होंने अपनी kept की, and separate उसमें examples, case studies, सब कुछ they did specifically. They practiced it so many times, and then actually what happened, they were able to do that, replicate that in the examination. Okay, because we know, we see, when we are seeing the copies, we know कि आपने उसको डायग्राम को एक्चुअली में सही में थोड़ा प्रैक्टिस किया था या नहीं किया था. बिकॉज इफ यू आर मेकिंग डायरेक्टली इन द एग्जामिनेशन, वो एक्यूरेसी और जो पैटर्न चाहिए वो सब चीजें नहीं आएंगी. ठीक है. So this is very, very important thing which he has told, and again reconfirm what we have been saying from long time, कि पहले से जो आपको what you have to link, what you have to do there, it is already pre-decided in a way. And examination में देखो, there will always be questions जो मैं categorize करता हूँ कि there will be some direct questions, some tricky questions, some exceptional questions. सो वो एकदम ट्रू है. एंड दोज डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चंस जो आते हैं, वेयर यू हैव डायरेक्ट रेडीमेड मटेरियल, दे प्ले अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल इवन इन पेपर टू. ऑल्दो पेपर टू को जनरली देखेंगे तो बहुत हमें ऐसा लगेगा कि इट इज ऑल लाइक सो मच डायनामिक एंड एवरीथिंग, बट स्टिल यू कैन रिलेट इट विथ द स्पेसिफिक टॉपिक्स ऑफ द सिलेबस. जहाँ का जो तुमने स्पेसिफिक कंटेंट तैयार किया है, उसी को मिक्स करके एक दो टॉपिक, तीन टॉपिक का कंटेंट उन आंसर्स जो क्वेश्चंस होते हैं उनका आंसर प्रिपेयर होता है, ठीक है। सो कीप दिस इन माइंड, दिस इज द वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट की। नाउ Naman, I would like to ask you, what was your strategy with respect to answer writing?
For answer writing, we need to understand that first we are not writing a GS answer, we are writing a geography optional answer. And a geography optional answer is incomplete if we don't have certain geographical and regional elements in the answer. These geographical elements comes through maps, case studies, examples. So my answer writing strategy was to have the content prepared. So I had the content from my notes. I have to write that content in the answer. But more important than that, especially in paper two, is to make your answer more presentable and better structured. This we do by incorporating all these things in the answers. For example, if a question is asked, like this time it was asked on coal reserves of India, so you can directly use the theories of paper one, which was Malthus carrying capacity you can use, limits to growth you can use, because the coal reserves will be declining with time. So you have to practice how to incorporate these theories into your answers. And for incorporating these theories, we have to write answers. So for writing answers, I used to make sure that my answer writing strategy was simple. I used to divide the answers into different subheadings, addressing each and every part of the question. So my answer would have two or three subheadings. Under each subheadings, I would write the content for that part, and I would make a map or a diagram on each and every page. I would try to make a map or a diagram, and wherever possible write a case study in every answer or in every second answer. So have case studies prepared for all the topics or most of the topics in paper 2, so that you can directly just copy that same case studies. I remember there was a question on groundwater this year, and I had prepared a case study on Ahmedabad facing groundwater crisis, Shimla facing groundwater crisis, Chennai facing groundwater crisis. So I directly wrote that case studies in my answers. So what happens is you can draw a map in which you can mark the cities or the districts or the areas which are overexploited or critical in the groundwater exploitation. You can write these one or two case studies which you know, which you have prepared, and write so many examples of regional areas where the groundwater issue is happening, what is the reason. In the map only you have to you can write that in Punjab there is agricultural over exploitation, while in desert area of Rajasthan it is an issue of groundwater development is less. So you have, if you have this prepared material, you have to just incorporate these in your answer. And with the content which sir also provides and you also have from your books, you have to just add value to your content through these things. So this was my basic strategy of answer writing.
You talked about the use of case studies. Now, there is lots of confusion with respect to case studies among the students. There are two main questions which I get from the students with respect to case studies. One is, what should be the source of these case studies, from where essentially students should be getting these case studies? And second is, how to incorporate them in your answers. Like, for example, what should be the weightage of the case studies versus the content which you have to write in the answer?
With respect to the sources of case studies, you have a lot of examples when you read different books, or when you read current affairs newspapers, or when you read magazines provided by sir or other people. So you get examples and many examples and case studies from there. For any example that you are getting, search on Google. You will get some more data that what is the facts for that case study. What could be the map or a diagram you can draw for that case study. So you need to do some internet search. And for some of the examples that you have, general examples, for example, there is in agriculture you will always talk about agricultural issues in Punjab and Haryana. So do some googling on the internet, find facts for this, what is the problems, what are the issues, and make a small case studies of 2 or 3 points. And in a case study, just mention that what are the different facts regarding that case studies, what is the region that it is affecting, draw a small map, regional map. You need not draw a map of India, you can just draw a map of Punjab and Haryana. And what are the issues, what are the solutions possible. So make a small case study of 2 3 lines and write that in the answer. And how to write that in the answer, I would say, uh, whenever you are discussing a point, for example, you are discussing problems of overexploitation of groundwater in India. So whenever you are discussing 2 3 points, then include a case study either as a box in the side or in the middle, anywhere. But in the subheading in which you are discussing that particular point, include that case study. That was my approach. With respect to weightage, don't write more than 2 case studies at all in an answer. One is sufficient, but that case study should be good. That case study should not be a random uh, uh, expansion of an example. That case study should contain some facts, some new information that an example does not have. So write 1 or 2 case studies in some of the answers in which you have some case studies, and that was required. Another major source of case studies are books like Down to Earth and Geography and You. I read Down to Earth a few editions and got a lot of case studies on environmental issues and all of the disasters from that. So you can read Down to Earth, Geography and You, and similarly Yojana and Kurukshetra also will have some case studies. So these are the major sources.
Specifically, I believe that Down to Earth is one magazine which is so much crucial for your preparation. So much crucial, not only for geography, but also for GS. It is very, very important. So this is one magazine which you have to like read. We also like our geography newsletter, which comes. It is also based a lot on. We incorporate lots of things from Down to Earth. But again, you can also otherwise also read Down to Earth. That is a very, very good magazine. Geography and You is also good, but when you are reading Geography and You, be more like selective, because in every issue of Geography and you'll hardly find 1 or 2 chapters which are there, which will be very useful for you. It is more of a research oriented magazine. Yojana, again, it is something which is like very, very crucial for your GS. So again, these are the things. Kurukshetra is also good with respect to case study. So read Kurukshetra with specific purpose of getting information with respect to case studies, because there is lots of rural development issues which are covered in Kurukshetra. Okay. So again, there is the idea is basically that there is lots of information. Even if suppose, for example, if you haven't read suppose Down to Earth previous issues, and if you read from here, there will be at least 5 issues which will be coming during this period before you are going to write the examination. And I'm very sure that in from these 5 issues, you'll be able to collect around 100 case studies you'll be able to collect overall. And again, sufficient number here and there, topic wise also you can have some case studies. Uh, I also believe very importantly that if you're using your atlas properly, then you will have lots of, you can create also some of the important like cases you can write. For example, suppose a question is on agriculture development in India, you can take cases of Punjab and Bihar. And if you have done the thematic reading of the atlas, the themes which are given, and you know the themes are the topographic theme and the climatic theme, so there are thematic maps which are given. So if you have read them properly, if you have seen them properly, if you can do, in fact, you can do state wise also, jotting down from the atlas. This can be a very, very good strategy. So again, you know that when you have to write, for example, about agriculture development, you'll essentially be focusing upon agroecological factors. You'll talk about the input factors. You'll essentially talk about the infrastructural factors, or sorry, institutional factors. So three type of factors you'll focus upon, and at least two of them you will very easily just find in the atlas itself. Others you can little bit Google search and add with respect to that. Otherwise also you are reading in the GS. Now, one thing I just want to ask you: in the answers which you are writing, what was essentially the length number of words which you are using in a particular case study? How much? How many words? Because we have like 10 markers, 15 markers, and 20 markers, and I ideally believe that 10 markers you should not exceed 150 marks. 15 markers is around 200 and 20 marks is around 250 words. So what was the number of words you were using in the case studies?
Uh, the average words I have used in the case studies would be around not more than 30. On any page in which I have written a case study, it will just take 20 or 30 percentage of the total space of that page. So that is the amount of space that is required to write in the case study. Not much. You have to just write 2 3 points or 2 3 lines, which will take hardly 25 30 words. So that is required in a case study. And even though the number of words is less, but I think the value that it adds, because you will probably get half a mark or 1 mark extra from another person who has written the same answer but not written a case study. So highlight that case study well, put it in a box, make a map or make a diagram, underline the keywords, write case study of Punjab and Haryana as agricultural development, whatever you are using. So these tricks are very important to gain the attention of the examiner, that you have studied in detail the subject and you have also collected case studies regarding this topic. So it gives a positive impression and it adds value to your answers as well as your marks.
So that is about the case studies. Now, with respect to diagrams, which we generally draw in our both papers, paper one and paper two, what was the average number of diagrams we were drawing per question? And were you drawing diagrams in every question, or were there some questions where you didn't draw diagrams?
With respect to the number of diagrams I was drawing, if we take paper 2, then it becomes very essential to draw diagrams. So I was almost drawing a diagram or a map. Diagram would include a map as well. So I was drawing a diagram or a map in almost every page of paper 2, because in paper 2 every question will have 2 or 3 subparts, and for every subpart you can make a map, and you should make a map. So you should make a map or map of a state or any other diagram which is possible. So I was almost drawing a map or a diagram in every page in paper 2, while in paper 1 topics like perspectives or or any more theoretical topic, there might not be a need of a diagram, so you can skip there. But in topics like geomorphology or climatology or even models and theories, all the theories have diagrams. So definitely, whatever diagrams are required, practice that. I had a separate notebook of only diagrams, in which for every chapter I would draw diagrams in that separate notebook and revise at the last moment. So that the diagrams are recollected easily, and you can easily draw the diagrams. You don't have to think a lot. So make such a copy, make such a notebook, and make sure that you draw diagrams, because it's very important to for drawing diagrams in geography optional.
Okay. We'll come back to geography, but there is one more very significant question. Students of geography, they face one very big difficulty, and the difficulty is about time management with respect to general studies, how they prepare, because generally it is perceived that geography has a vast, very huge syllabus. And again, I find many times this year also this is the case. Many of the students, they have got good marks. Like one of the students I know, he has achieved 282 marks in the optional paper, but he didn't find his name in the final list. And one of the reasons was paper 1 of GS, he has got lower marks, and paper 4 of GS, he has got lower marks. Okay, so tell me how you were able to manage time with respect to what was, like, for example, share of time you devoted to GS and geography. Were you doing both of these on same day, or you had like some of them are studying 3 days geography, 3 days GS. So what was your strategy?
My strategy for dividing mark time allocated for GS and optional varied with time. I after mains of 2020, I wholeheartedly devoted almost 2 to 3 months for geography optional. Uh, that time I did not study much of GS because I knew my weak portion was optional, so I need to complete that. Once I was sure that my optional is completed, my GS is also well prepared. Then I started to divide almost time on the basis of 60-40 for optional, 60 for optional and 40 for GS because I felt that I need to improve marks in optional. And I always dedicated 2 to 3 continuous days for completing a chapter. For example, if I start with biogeography, then I will complete the whole chapter and then switch to GS or any other thing that I have to do. So I will completely study for 2 3 days that particular chapter and then switch to GS any topic for 2 3 days and then again switch to geography optional. That was my strategy for time allocation.
And what about in between prelims and mains? How did you allocate time?
Between prelims and mains was also similar. Almost 50-60% of the time went for geography optional because I wrote a lot of answers. I wrote previous year questions. I also wrote test series from sir. So that took a lot of time. And before every attempt, every test series, I would revise that topic. So I would revise that topic for 1 day or 2 day, or that chapter for 1 day and 2 day, and then write a test for that. So that will almost take a 3 days for writing a test and its revision in a week. And for the next 3 days, I will give for GS. So if I have planned to write answer of physical geography, then I will revise for 3 4 days, write a test, then revise 3 4 days for GS1, write a test for GS1. That was my general strategy because I always used to flow with the test series because there is a pressure when you have to write a test series, you have to revise within that 3 days and then things get completed on time. So that was my strategy. I was following the schedule of the test series.
Yes, that is one thing. Although I bet I have a different opinion. My personal experience as a student was different from what Naman has. Probably Naman is much more disciplined than I was. So really, the strategy which Naman is telling you, it requires a very strong discipline and very uh, dedicated. I would say too much of dedication, because what happens normally, what I find when we are doing like 3 days का जब हम schedule बनाते हैं, it is good. But what used to happen with me, it would be different for different students. Uh, it was like I used to get bored reading one thing. I used to get bored, and productivity, I saw that it used to reduce. And like, it was, suppose I had prepared a plan of reading something in 3 days. What used to happen, I would be able to complete only 60%, 70% of what I had actually planned. So this was the main problem which I used to face. And definitely, thus I say to the students that you have to follow your own way, own style, because every topper, they will have their own stories. Some of them would say that they used to do both the things in one day, GS and geography. Okay, because as I said, what Naman is telling, it requires huge amount of dedication, that you have to have a very strong willpower, that you will be able to complete that in just allocated time. Hota nahi hai. It is very very difficult. And Pratik, what about this strategy of your time allocation?
Sir, I didn't believe in time allocation as such because the reason I chose geography was the overlap between GS and geography. And I used to study in that way only. When I was studying for GS paper 1, I had already planned when I study GS paper 1, GS 2, GS 3, and their geography together. If I was studying agriculture in GS, I used to study agriculture of geography with it. And because my notes were also arranged in that manner, having geographical parts like the models included in the notes, I could integrate GS and the current affairs of GS in geography itself, which was in what I call was an integrated approach. Similarly for other topics also, and for topics which were not at all related, like perspectives were not at all related. Biogeography and environment geography is a bit deep in geography. In GS, it is not so deep. So for these topics, I had allocated different amount of time. I used to do them before starting because that is useful in all of the parts of the syllabus.
Yes, that is what I was saying, that you have to find your own right strategy. Okay, and it can mean number of things, n number of strategies can be there. The only thing is according to your own personality, according to your own time, because I know many of you are also working professionals. So essentially, what happens, you have less time than the others. And really believe me, when some student comes to me and say that I'm working, so first thing I always tell them that this is a blessing for you. Why this is a blessing for you? Because if you are working, what happens, you have limited time. And if you are actually dedicated enough, what you will do, you will study only, you will be able to study only limited amount of content in that amount of time. So your deviation with respect to so many other, most of the students are basically, problem is they are so much confused about what to study. They don't have a fixed content to study. When you have lesser amount of time, then what happens, you are sure कि इससे ज़्यादा हो ही नहीं सकता. जैसा हमारे साथ क्या होता है, जब हम एग्ज़ाम में जाते हैं, तो 6 महीने पहले हमारी स्ट्रैटेजी कुछ और होती है. वी हैव टू स्टडी दिस मच थिंग्स. 2 महीने जब बचते हैं, तो हमारी स्ट्रैटेजी टोन डाउन हो जाती है. और when there is 15 days left, then also we have some strategy and it is further toned down. Okay, but still at that time also we believe कि हो जाएगा if we have done some previous work. ठीक है, so this is the thing, that depending upon the time you have, you allocate your space. Ideally speaking, normally क्या होना चाहिए कि every day you should be doing both the things. Because suppose करो कि I have to complete suppose geomorphology topic in 3 days, मैं उससे ज़्यादा टाइम दे ही नहीं सकता हूँ. And if I allocate full 3 days to geomorphology, and that is one. Second is half a day in all the 3 days I am able to allocate to geomorphology. ठीक है, जब पूरे 3 दिन होंगे, सपोज करो कि आपने गाइडेंस से 500 प्लस किया है, एंड मैंने क्लास में अच्छे से आपको ज्योग्राफी जियोमॉर्फोलॉजी में बहुत सारे क्वेश्चन करवा दिए, एंड मोर देन 30-35 क्वेश्चंस, उसमें बहुत सारे डायमेंशंस ऑलमोस्ट कवर्ड हैं. टेक्टोनिक जियोमॉर्फोलॉजी का अलग सेशन है, तो उसमें भी देयर सो मेनी क्वेश्चंस व्हिच आर देयर. सो ऑलमोस्ट जियोमॉर्फोलॉजी के 50-60 क्वेश्चंस में मैं मोर और लेस जियोमॉर्फोलॉजी कवर कर लेता हूँ. ठीक है, इफ यू हैव सपोज हाफ अ डे, यू विल बी स्टडिंग ओनली दिस मच. तुम्हें पता है कि मैं 50 ये जो क्वेश्चंस हैं वो मुझे कवर करके जाने. लेकिन अगर आपके पास पूरे 3 दिन मिलते हैं, तो अगेन यू विल गेट डेविएटेड. सोचोगे कि यार ये वाला समझ में नहीं आ रहा है, एक बार बुक खोल के देख लेता हूं. एंड बुक में गए तो पर्टिकुलरली ड्यूरिंग दिस पीरियड बिटवीन प्री एंड मेंस, यू विल गेट लॉस्ट. ठीक है, इफ यू आर डूइंग रीडिंग सम बुक्स बिफोर प्रीलिम्स, इट इज फाइन, बट ड्यूरिंग दिस पीरियड यू डोंट हैव टू डू दैट. यू शुड हैव बाय दिस टाइम अ फिक्स्ड कंटेंट, उतना ही पढ़ना है. ठीक है, दैट इज व्हाई आई से कि मेरे हिसाब से जो आइडियल थोड़ा सा स्ट्रैटेजी होता है, दैट इज यू कैन रेशियो तुम चूज कर सकते हो. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल, इनिशियली यू आर गिविंग 70% ऑफ द टाइम इन अ डे टू ऑप्शनल, बट डोंट ऑल टुगेदर लीव जीएस. अभी हमने एक चीज देखा कि द पीपल हु हैव सिक्योर्ड हायर रैंक्स were the people who had a very even marks. across the papers. Okay? This has played a very, very important role. And when you are not paying adequate attention to JS, then it can become difficult. Okay? So that is one very, very important thing. Now, coming back to the geography preparation, for paper two, Naman, did you read some books also?
For paper two, particularly, I only read book by Khuller, Dr. D.R. Khuller, and any other book I did not read except NCRTs, which we all should read in the beginning. So my source of content was mostly Sir's notes and Sir 500 plus classes, and some edition which, if it was required or something I could not get, I read it through Khuller. Apart from this, nothing else is required in terms of reading from books. What is required is revising that content, reading that content again and again, so that you have that content in mind, and solving questions, previous questions, and answer writing. So for paper two, particularly, reading a lot of books is not required. At least this is what I think.
And what about you, Pratik?
Sir, I never purchased a book for geography.
Pratik was actually my foundation batch student. So he had foundation batch. We are actually covering very extensively all the topics. So there, it is not like 500 plus. 500 plus is like more of a fast track course. So there, some topics are covered and others are not covered. Comparatively, if you look the optional batch, the foundation course, it is much more comprehensive. So that is what I said. The less the sources, the better. But still, I also suggest in my classes that you should have one book. And if you look into the overall books which are available, Dear Cooler, I find to be a good book. Reason are a number of things. One important reason I find is it is one of the books which regularly gets updated. Okay, so that is one of the things. Second is there are lots of good diagrams, maps which are there in the book. So when you are reading using book for paper two, for example, you don't have to read the book end to end. Okay, what I try to teach in the classes is that every topic of paper two there should be a framework. Once you have the understanding and the framework of that topic, what you need is you need content to put in that framework. And at many places, the most significant place where you can find that content, ready-made content available is the book, which is there. Okay? So keep this in mind. Like you can take number of examples. Like for example, if I take this example, Abhi, because I was giving in the test series, so I just remember that example now also. Uh, Suppose if you have to write growth, population growth in India. Okay. Now, in the class, I'll give you framework and I'll also put the content of Indian geography. But suppose population growth, even if suppose you haven't got that framework from me, you have to create your own framework. Can I say one theory which we have studied is demographic transition theory in paper one, which is a holistic theory. And we know that stage one, stage two, stage three, like this, and stage four. Can I use that when I'm explaining Indian geography or population growth of India? Definitely I can. So I have a framework in my mind, but how to use that framework? Essentially, what I will do is I'll extract some content from the book. Like if you look into the book would say that population growth of India can be divided into the following four stages. Like first stage, the period of stagnant growth, which is up to 1921. Then from 1921 to 1951, the period of slow growth. And then comes the period of accelerated growth from 51 to 81. And finally, after 81, the period of high growth with definite signs of slowing down. So these are the four stages, four phases which will be mentioned in the book. Now I will look into how I can fit it in the framework of the demographic transition theory, because that will give a more scientific outlook to what I am writing. So clearly, till the stage of 1921, it is the India was in the first stage of demographic transition, because we know first stage there is stagnant growth which is taking place. Then the second stage, 1921 to 51, we can say it is the early second stage. Then 51 to 81, period of accelerated growth, it is the late second stage. And finally, in 91, India enters into the third stage of demographic transition. So I can, with the use of theory, I can organize the information which I have. But remember, this is actually a little bit dangerous approach. It happens because many times I've seen students would neglect the content part, the specific content of Indian geography. And what they will do, they will just write the theory. Theory थोड़ी पूछा था. What was asked was population growth of India. Theory was just a way of making my answer more scientific. It just provided a framework. Okay? So this is the role of the book many times at many places, because see, the classes will be fast and many times many things can be skipped. So what happens, it is all there in the book, good diagrams, some good points also here and there you can find. So content hai aapke paas, you just, and one book, dr Fuller, as a reference material, as I said, not to be read end to end, just to be referred for some specific things. Okay, so that is, I really believe that paper 2 should be there. What was your score in paper 2, Pratik?
147.
147. बिना बुक के भी 147 आ जाते हैं. ओके.
सर एक चीज मैं ऐड करूंगा.
हाँ.
With respect to number of books you have to read, different materials you have to follow, there is often a misconception that you have to follow more, you have to read more to get good marks. Even after 2 years of intense preparation, I still have a list of books which I have never read, and I plan to read if I will be writing this mains. So I've never read Rupa Made Simple or some other books like this. So you will, how much ever you prepare, you will have some books or content which you will never read, and you will be enticed to read on that. So never fall on that. Have fixed book list, have a fixed strategy, stick to that, and believe that just by reading one notes of sir, or just by following Kuller for paper 2, you will be able to easily manage and get good marks if your strategy is good, if your content is well prepared from that only single source. So never run for multiple sources. It's not a good idea. And secondly, I would say that as soon as sir said that, sir, he was discussing a question on population growth of India, instant second, the first thing which came to my mind was the demographic transition theory. So this is what is required. You have to, as soon as you hear a topic, you should be, your mind should have clicked with a few theories or examples. So this is what comes with practice and continuously reading that same content which sir has provided or you have read from the book. So this is what is required, and not reading so many books and making so many notes, because that will not come handy when you have to ultimately revise at the last moment.
Actually, what happens is, the more you remember, the more you will be able to interlink. It is as simple as that. And the more you will remember, when you will be reading less. So this is what you have to essentially do. Or that is one thing. Now, one of my strategies of paper 2 revolves around practicing a lot of questions. So I always, many times students, when they're coming to me, I always say, paper 1, do more rectification, and in paper 2, solve as many questions as you can, particularly if you talk about the previous year questions. If you look into paper 2 previous year questions, you will find that in paper 2, although we say that the pattern has changed after 2009, but even if you go before 2009, if there were suppose 15 question or how many questions were there, out of that you will find at least 3 4 questions which were still at that time challenging and quite contemporary or related with the current affairs or quite dynamic. So really I believe that previous year question solving is very important key. And I would like to ask first Pratik, did you solve previous year questions in paper 2?
Sir, as I didn't join a test series officially, my only questions that I used to write were PYQs in both the papers. With paper one, what happens is the PYQs are already in your course syllabus material because that is what is directly asked. But for paper two, PYQs, other than that coming directly in the exam, they also act as a source of knowing what dimensions can a particular subtopic from a topic of syllabus can be explored into. So we have a book from Vishal Publication, or Sir also releases a PDF on his channel. So I had written every possible dimension and every possible question specifically for paper two in all the topics 1 to 10. I lagged in the resources part, but other than that, all the PYQs, each dimension I had written it, all answers completely with diagrams, case studies, whatever are to be incorporated at that moment in my while I was preparing basically.
And Naman, what about you?
I've also solved all the PYQs. I It is difficult to write answers to all of them, so I wrote answers to some of them. I framed in my mind, because of time constraint, answers to some of the others which were left. But I ensured that I have read all the previous year questions and made sure that if something of static portion is asked in that previous year question, I should have some content or some reading material on that. So if some very random question is asked from paper two, then I would read some from Khuller or from whatever source is possible. So I would either write the answers or make a framework of the answer in my mind, but I will definitely read all the previous year questions. So previous year questions are indispensable for answer writing.
Now, a very important question related with this solving of previous year question is, because many students have this dilemma, have this problem. Once you write the answer of, suppose you are writing a previous year question, how you will know that you are on the correct lines? So tell me, Naman, first you start.
Uh, or if you have to judge yourself if you are writing in on the correct lines, then first method I did was seeing toppers last year toppers copies, because when I did not see the toppers copies in 2020 attempt, and when I saw it in 2021 attempt, I realized that my answer writing strategy was very wrong. So when you see a lot of topper copies, toppers who have scored good marks in geography optional, then you would realize that they have a set pattern of writing answers, which I've already told. So if you are following that answer writing strategy while attempting your previous year questions, you are on the right path. When you write an answer of a previous year question, make sure that you are writing the content, the facts, diagrams, perspective, everything. But also after writing the answer, read on that, so that if even if you are not writing the correct answer or you are missing on something, you will have some content prepared after the question. So the idea of previous year question is not only practicing answer writing but also enriching your content. And this is what I did while writing previous year questions.
And Pratik, what about you? Because you didn't join any test series. So how did you self-evaluate?
Sir, I had joined a answer writing evaluation program, and as I told you, I wrote a lot of PYQs. They were fed up of me because I used to send them answers every day. And their review I incorporated. When they sent me the checked copies, I used to mail them back. They suppose someone is saying add a case study. So the best part of my preparation was I was not in Delhi, so there was no noise. So I used to ask them from where can I get, and there was no reply, and it was all on me to look for it on newspapers, magazines, and that's why it helped me because I had to do it myself, and that evaluation and feedback process that enriched my answers.
My take on this is that one way you can do this is what you do in paper 2. First of all, you don't have lots of choice. So ideally what you have to do, you have to prepare the entire paper 2. And for this what you can do is you take, suppose I'm taking a topic, I would look into the previous year questions which have been asked on that topic. That is the first step. Now I'll take some of these and I will write answer on them. And I'm here assuming that you have a basic level of preparation for paper 2 already have. Okay, there is some, I think, rally or whatever. Okay, so then what you have to do here is, uh, once you have written your answer, that is the second step. Then comes the third step, where you will check the content you have on that question or and on that topic. So what you do, very quickly glance through, revise that content. Okay, if you feel that there was something lacking in your content, you can even use Google or internet or whatever source and think from that perspective, so you enrich that content there. Once you have done this, the next step is, now you evaluate your answer, give yourself marks. Okay, and this is, I think, a very very practical way of doing preparing paper 2. So in this process what you are doing, one, you are writing answers. Second thing, because once you are looking into the previous year questions, you'll understand the various type of dimensions which can be asked from that particular topic. Okay, so it will broaden your horizon about the topic. Then once you have written the answer, you are also revising the content you have. If you feel the content was lacking, you are also enriching the content. And then you are self evaluating, you are seeing what were your weaknesses. Okay, and the cycle goes on. Definitely in the first, I would say, 20 days, you'll not get very good marks, but you'll see that after this, after 20 days, you'll see that you'll find a lot of improvement. Okay, so this is one way I feel that paper 2 can be prepared. And I'm specifically talking about the period between prelims and mains. And here there is an assumption that one time you have at least covered the syllabus. Okay, so this is one way I really feel it is very very helpful. And previous year questions are the best sources which you can essentially use. Okay, because for them you don't have to go to anywhere, they are already there with you. So that is about the paper 1 strategy. Now, general thing about paper paper 1 bol raha hu, paper 2, sorry. General thing about paper 2. Tell me, both of you, how much useful was your preparation of paper 2 with respect to GS? Naman.
I think paper 2 of geography optional finds relevance in GS1 a lot, in GS3 a lot. So GS1, it's obvious we have to directly write answers of geography, in which we can use the same approach of how we do in paper 2, but don't use theories so much because probably they won't understand. And also multi-dimensionalize your answers. For example, in GS1 versus paper 2 of optional, there can be a difference of writing social dimension, cultural dimension, or historical dimension, geopolitical dimension in answers of GS1, while one should avoid cultural or social political dimensions in paper 2 of geography optional. So this is one major difference. Apart from that, most of the things remains the same. GS3 also finds a lot of relevance, and I probably got a very good marks in GS3 because of my use of maps in questions of agriculture, questions of internal security, environment, disaster management. So all of these topics have a lot of overlap with paper 2 of optional, and we can directly use a lot of examples and make maps, diagrams, which is different from what other people are not doing. So this is how. And definitely in terms of content, we have the content from optional, which we can directly use in questions of environment, disaster management, and so on. So definitely one should apply the learnings from paper 2 into GS.
How much you got in paper 3?
This time I got 90. Last time I got 103, which was one of the highest. So
So yes, 90 is also because this year paper 3 marks were quite on the lower side. Majority of people were hovering around 70 and 80 in paper 3. And what about you, Pratik? How it was helpful?
Sir, as I have mentioned about the integrated thing, uh, in paper 1, GS1, that is, the geography part is directly relevant. Other than that, in GS2 also, we have the topic of political geography as well as regional planning and development. Like we had a question on Panchayati Raj and decentralization in geography paper 2. Also in international relations, we study in geography topics like frontiers and boundaries, the space relation in the first topic of geography. Then in GS3, the economic part, economic, that is agriculture, industry, the environment portion. So my approach was from starting, the overlapping parts were to be studied together. So that helped me directly in terms of understanding it. Drawing diagrams was coming naturally to me in GS, which used to easily fetch 1 marks extra from other people. Then geography, when you write geography answers, you have a lot of content and you have to put it in a concise manner. In GS also, when you study all the time, you have a lot of content, and this particular habit of yours from which you develop in geography optional comes useful in GS also.
Okay. Uh, One more question related with geography. What were your strategies? Because we have already talked about paper 2 a lot. What were your strategies with respect to paper 1? Because when we see that paper 1 becomes a different ball game altogether. In paper 2, it is more about the application, how much you are able to apply. What about paper 1? So Pratik, you start how you did your paper 1.
Sir, in paper one, it was identification of topics. Paper one is more static, according to me. And topics like climatology, oceanography, biogeography, environment geography, other topics like models, perspectives, these topics are a direct hit. Topics like geomorphology, population and settlement, these are to be applied in paper one also because questions are not directly asked from the syllabus term. So I had identified that the topics which I can give least input and get maximum output, and I covered them thoroughly. For topics like geomorphology, which are too extensive, I used to do bare minimum and keep on reading the same material again and again, because when altiplanation comes, when pseudo volcanism comes, I know that if I am not knowing, not many people will be knowing, and that won't be the real competition, or that won't eliminate me from the competition as such.
What about you, Naman?
for paper one of geography, as sir said, it requires a lot of reading. So I read, my basic source were sir's class notes and 500 plus notes. And I used to enrich or try to understand some of the topics, especially topics from geomorphology, climatology, from books. So for physical geography, I mostly read Savindra Singh along with my primary source was notes, but extra reading was from Savindra Singh physical geography book. I did not read geomorphology separately, climatology separately because those are very extensive books and not much that you gain from that. So for climatology, oceanography, these are almost similar questions are asked every year. Questions are repeated, and the content is also fixed. So focus a lot on them, as Pratik also said. For topics like geomorphology, it is a huge topic, and the cost benefit ratio is also not much because you have to study for 1 month or 2 months initially to prepare that topic, and you will hardly get 1 or 2 questions to write on that. So read what are commonly asked. You need not read into very much detail or things like pseudo volcanism, which you cannot predict. So read whatever things are usually asked and mentioned in the book. For biogeography and environmental geography, these are somewhat topics in which no material is available directly. So I just followed sir's notes, and they are sufficient. You don't have to follow any other source for that. Human geography is a more rewarding part of the paper one, according to me. So I focused a lot on excelling in topics of human geography. Perspective sir notes are very good. I also read R.D. Dixit to understand more on things which are taught. But after reading sir notes, then you would realize that R.D. Dixit would become easier to understand. If you read it initially, then you will find it very difficult. But after sir notes, reading and understanding, then or attending the classes, you will be easily able to understand that book. Economic geography, population geography, settlement geography, all of these topics. Uh, I haven't read any book. I just relied from sir's notes, and they were very extensive. They were very good, 500 plus notes also. And the focus should be on learning theories, learning topics which are mentioned, and applying directly in the answers. There is not much requirement of reading so many books or writing examples, because there is a fixed pattern which everybody needs to follow. And models and theories, again, sir notes and Majid Hussain. So that was my strategy. I did not read a lot of books. I relied mostly on notes and 500 plus material. So that is.
Paper 2, as I told you, you cannot skip topics in paper 2. You have to be prepared very good in majority of the topics, because what happens in paper 2, they are not asking you very direct questions. They are linking, suppose there are two topics in the syllabus, and they will link both the topics and they'll ask you one question. So if you're not prepared in both the topics, you'll not be able to answer that question. That means your choice of selection is of topics is less in paper 2. But success in paper 1 is more dependent upon this choice. Because what happens, paper 1 is very, very extensive, very vast. So practically speaking, the time you have, you won't be able to prepare, you won't be able to become good in all the topics of paper 1. So you have to identify which are the topics from where I am getting more straight questions. And if I can do very well prepared, I can be well prepared for those topics again. That means the direct questions which I am talking about, you will get very good marks in them. So if I realize physical geography, climatology, oceanography, and biogeography are the three topics from where very, very direct questions are asked. On the contrary, अब देखो, for example, geomorphology में पहले का tectonic geomorphology देखो, they used to ask you direct plate tectonics, continental drift, how it is improvement over continental drift, such type of questions. But you look into the questions which they are asking from 2018 of tectonic geomorphology, and you'll find that every year they are making little bit of tricks. Every year it is like this. So this year they asked plate tectonics theory how it was built upon the foundations of isostasy and continental drift theory, and it was not very easy to write until unless you have a very good understanding of that. Okay? So again, you have to choose your areas from where you will get very good marks. Like for example, I always say this, take the example of regional planning. रीजनल प्लानिंग में कुल मिलाकर के 6 टॉपिक हैं, और उसको तैयार करने में हार्डली 1 से 2 दिन लगता है. If you have the content, within that time you will prepare it well. And there is an assured one direct question from that regional planning topic in paper 1. ठीक है, अब तुम मुझे बताओ कि 2 महीने जियोमॉर्फोलॉजी में लगाना बेटर होगा, या फिर spending that 2 days in regional planning would be better. Okay, so this is the thing, most of the students become more emotional with respect to many of the topics. So that you don't have to do. You have to look into the pattern. Okay, there can be, like for example, there can be always a risk. Like for example, there was one year where we found that there were so many perspectives. Okay, question. कौन सा था? I think 2019 or something. There were many questions from perspectives in human geography. Okay, not 2019. It was
18.
18. It was 18. It was 2019. There was one of my students, Patil. He got 301 marks, highest of that year. And he came to me and I asked him, what was your basic strategy? So, from where you attempted more questions, he told me that I attempted more questions from physical geography. And again, I asked him why, because most of my students, they are more comfortable, so much comfortable in human geography, physical geography also, but human geography preferable because you'll always have a buffer in human geography. कुछ भी नहीं आता तो भी you'll be able to write something. So he told me that one of the barrier for me was perspectives in human geography. It was so much philosophical that I never understood a single word in that topic. And it was out of like beyond me. So what I did, I relied more on physical geography because human geography is like it is built upon perspectives. So I felt that my human geography was weak and physical geography I can rely more on. And you see that year his marks were the highest marks. So again, see, there can be always, agar dekho, what I say is if it is not in your destiny, you'll not get selected. So at some point of time, you'll have to take risks. So there will always be risks कि suppose मैंने सोचा कि जियोमॉर्फोलॉजी को मैं एज अ बेसिक मिनिमम ही करके जाता हूँ, बहुत एक्सटेंसिवली नहीं करता हूँ. देयर कैन बी सपोज मोर क्वेश्चंस फ्रॉम जियोमॉर्फोलॉजी दैट ईयर. ठीक है, बट स्टिल माय क्वेश्चन इज अगर सपोज करो मोर क्वेश्चन भी आ गए, were you sure कि if you are devoting those 2 months, you'll be able to answer all the questions? The type of questions which are asked, you see, it is not necessary. So there will be risk in every strategy which you take. You have to identify which of the strategy has the least risk. And I really believe if you choose some of the topics which I am talking about, you will essentially get a less risky strategy. Okay. So, any other, if you have any other questions, you can ask. Hmm.
My question is regarding example, the difference between example and case study. Is the case study is just an elaborate example, or we need to include some specific points which makes it a case study? Like most of the time, we just give examples. Like you have given in Punjab, we have agriculture development in Bihar, we don't have that much. So it is a case study, or it is just an example in that short length.
So example, you can say case study is a build-up version of an example, but there is a difference. I was always confused between the two, but then I realized that case study is something in which you are trying to explain that particular topic by using an example. For example, if a question is asked that in urban areas water bodies are getting polluted or getting destroyed, encroached upon. This was a question of GS1. But if this question is asked in optional paper, then examples would include uh, Charkop Lake in Mumbai, Meethi River in Mumbai, and so on. But if you have to write a case study, you can have a case study of Yamuna River in Delhi, how the ppm of or BOD or COD of Yamuna River is much higher than the required. How what areas are the pollutants getting into the Yamuna River? How is the what is the plan that the government has for cleaning the river? So a case study is an exam is a elaborate or a detailed version of an example, you can say, with facts, with some details regarding that particular topic in which you are talking about, and a diagram also. Examples you'll never make a diagram, while in case studies you will make a map or a diagram.
Sir, in answer writing, in 10 marker, 50 marker, and 20 marker, incorporating more number of points or explaining 2 or 3 point comprehension is better in paper 2 or paper 1 geography, is different from GS perspective.
So, for geography optional, I never used to think incorporating more points is the key. Like for questions like critically analyze behavior school of thought. So there you can have more points involved. But if a question is like this year we had, I think on behavior score only we had. So the question's demand was three different angles. And if you see the keywords in the question and address all the three different keywords directly, you don't need to think you have to write 3 points or 5 points because already you are filling the space that is given and the demand of the question is addressed. Whether you write it in paragraph form or you incorporate more points, that should flow naturally. Don't go on focusing that I want one more, one more, one more.
I'll answer your question with an example. Suppose if you look into the previous year questions, you'll find one question which has been very regularly asked, and this is difference between tropical and temperate cyclones. बहुत बार पूछा गया है climatology में, and you will find that this question has been asked also as a 60 marker. This question has also been asked as a 20 marker, which was a short note of that phase, previous paradigm of examination. So that means it has been asked also as a long question, as a short question. Now think, like for example, in my classes, I give the difference of like 14 points, 15 points differences are there. Okay. Now think that if you're writing a short note, will you not try to write all the points which you know? What will be the difference when you are writing it as a long answer? You will explain those points also. Okay. So this is essentially the difference. When you are writing a short note, the answer should be complete. Explanation can be less. But I think all the points should be there. When you are writing a longer question, then you can expand those points. You can incorporate examples, case studies. Okay. So that makes the basic difference.
Sir, will you please provide your notes or answer test copy?
Yes, I have talked with Naman and will be providing that. In fact, he will be helping us all out also. So he will be, I have talked to him, he will be there in the mentoring program, which our test series program, which is going on, and the 500 plus. So if you have to show some copies, so he will be there with us. Although he will be online because he is not there in Delhi. So from Mumbai, he'll be able to do that. Any other questions? Just before you take the mic, there is one question which is student is asking here online. What was the strategy for the paper to map locations? And I would like both of you to answer on this.
So for paper to map, first, the same thing. Previous year questions are repeated. One to location is always repeated. So if you map those locations, your one two locations would be satisfied. Then if you analyze that 10 locations which are given, three to four are static and other are current based. So like this year they had Zero Valley location. So if you read the newspapers daily or you do the magazine, you will know the location somewhat and the description also you'll know. So that satisfies previous year analysis and the current part satisfied more than half of the locations. Then the remaining is the static part, where for GS prelims also I believe you should do is practice from atlas, the static locations, the mountains, passes, rivers. You just draw, because you are geography student also, draw the map of India and create your own map book from atlas marking those locations. It becomes easy for you, though in exam I could do only 5 locations, but I think this works.
Mostly similar to my friend. I also analyzed what are the different types of locations are asked. So I found out that tourist places, rivers, lakes, these are some of the common examples, common points which are asked for marking. So we have that book by Prem Patel, India Through Maps. So read that. You can read that book for static map entries. It's a very extensive and bulky book, so it will be very difficult to remember. But at least for important sections, you can prepare from that. For map markings out of the current affairs, Sir also provides a list of marking at the end, just before the mains examination. So I read from that. And also, if you are continuously reading uh, different magazines and newspapers, you will have more or less an idea about current affairs. Last year in 2020, Atal Tunnel was asked, which is in news frequently. So these you have to gather from newspapers and magazines. This was my strategy.
Uh, Correct source he is telling, because actually the guidance mapping which we do, that is based upon that book only, Prem Patel. He was actually my study partner. We used to be like prepare together, and many of the entries we have done essentially together, which is written in the book. So the same actually source, which is the book source, was my source also during the preparation. So that is the same thing which I also provide. We have definitely improved upon that. So the guidance material for that map is also actually very very good. And what I have done, if you some of you would have seen, we have converted it into slides, where there is I try to teach it from two point of view, the absolute location and the relative location point of view. So when we are talking about absolute location, we have divided India into grids, and for example, it is located in this grid, that is a kind of absolute location. When we are talking about relative location, we are using that uh, Orient Black Swan Atlas and snippets of that Orient Black Swan Atlas, and there we are talking about that where it is exactly located. For example, if I am talking about Indus River, whether it is north of which mountain, south of which mountain. So essentially, when you are doing this kind of relative reading of the mapping, you are not only learning that entry, but also learning other entries and creating links. Because remember, links are the things which you will remember. ठीक है? Some-
हेलो सर, मैं आपसे पूछना चाहता हूँ, मैंने 500 प्लस 2021 का जून वाला बैच ज्वाइन किया था, उसको कंप्लीट कर लिया है। अब टेस्ट सीरीज भी आज 19 को टेस्ट था, मैंने टेस्ट नहीं लिखा है। मतलब पिछले बार भी जो 500 प्लस था उसमें टेस्ट था, वो डिले होते चले जा रहे हैं। मतलब अभी नमन सर ने बताया कि पास्ट ईयर के क्वेश्चंस को, क्योंकि आपने क्लास में जो पढ़ाया है उसको अप्लाई करना ज़रूरी है। जो पास्ट ईयर के क्वेश्चंस हैं, हम डायरेक्ट जब टेस्ट लिखने जाते हैं, या तो पेपर कंप्लीट नहीं होता है, या हम उस कंटेंट को रेप्लिकेट नहीं कर पा रहे हैं अपने आंसर्स में। सो क्या करना चाहिए, या डेट को फिक्स कर देना चाहिए, जितना भी सिलेबस कंप्लीट हो जाए, जितना भी पढ़ पा रहे हैं टेस्ट को देना चाहिए, या कंप्लीट होने पर ही देना चाहिए? क्या आपका ठीक होना है?
आई थिंक कि अगर तुम कंप्लीशन नहीं कर पा रहे हो, ठीक है, पहले हम उस पर बात करते हैं, फिर देखते हैं कि विल टॉक अबाउट दैट. सो इफ यू आर अनएबल टू कंप्लीट, दैट मीन्स तुम कुछ ना कुछ कॉम्प्लिकेट कर रहे हो. बिकॉज 500 प्लस इतना ऑर्गेनाइज्ड है उसका कंटेंट ऑलरेडी, कि इफ यू जस्ट रिलाई ऑन दैट, एंड इफ यू जस्ट फोकस ऑन द रिवीजन, मगिंग अप, वो इतना टाइम नहीं लेगा. और जैसे अब टेस्ट की बात करें तो देर इज ऑलमोस्ट अ 2 वीक गैप मैंने दिया है. तो उसमें वो जो कंटेंट है 500 का, देर इज 1 वीक आई थिंक जिसमें टेस्ट 1 वीक के बाद ही है, बट मोस्टली यू आर गेटिंग 2 वीक्स. सो that time is actually sufficient, I believe, to cover the 500 plus content. ठीक है? So सबसे पहले, if you are unable to cover that, you look into what mistakes you are doing, whether you are expanding your sources or you are trying to focus too much on. देखो, एक चीज होती है, मैं देखता हूं अक्सर स्टूडेंट्स को लगता है कि हमने एक बार पढ़ा और मुझे याद हो जाना चाहिए. ऐसा होता नहीं है. You have to read it multiple times. कई बार पढ़ना होता है, तब जा करके you will be basically reaching a position जहां तुम्हें याद होने लगेगा. मल्टीपल टाइम्स उसको पढ़ते रहो, समझ में नहीं भी आ रहा है, देन ऑल्सो यू कीप ऑन गोइंग थ्रू दैट. दैट इज द वे यू हैव टू डू. टेस्ट सीरीज का फायदा, यू विल बी एबल टू टेक एडवांटेज ऑफ द टेस्ट सीरीज ओनली व्हेन यू आर राइटिंग इट इन अ डिसिप्लिन्ड स्टिपुलेटेड मैनर. अदरवाइज क्या होगा कि इट विल डेफिनेटली कीप ऑन पोस्टपोनिंग. तो वट एवर इज, देखो, आई रियली बिलीव टेस्ट सीरीज इज मोर अबाउट learning from the mistakes which otherwise you will do in the examination hall. ठीक है, डेफिनेटली उसमें आपको कंटेंट भी मिल जाता है, नो डाउट अबाउट दैट, बट इट इज मोर अबाउट लर्निंग फ्रॉम दोज मिस्टेक्स. सो सपोज देयर वर 3 topics in this first test. It was models and theories, it was perspectives, and it was population geography. And I was preparing, मैंने अपना टारगेट बना रखा था कि मुझे देना है, but I was unable to prepare suppose perspectives in human geography. ठीक है, बट मैंने पॉपुलेशन एंड मॉडल्स एंड थ्योरीज कर लिया. नाउ रादर देन डिस्टर्बिंग द स्केड्यूल एंड पोस्टपोनिंग इट, क्योंकि मैंने 2 टॉपिक कर लिए थे, आई वुड गो एंड राइट द टेस्ट. डेफिनेटली मुझे कम मार्क्स मिलेंगे, नो डाउट अबाउट दैट, बट मुझे पता है ना कि आई वॉज गोइंग टू टेस्ट माई सेल्फ इन दीज 2 टॉपिक्स. सो वॉट आई डिड इन दोज 2 टॉपिक्स, क्या मैं उन टॉपिक्स के क्वेश्चंस को सॉल्व कर पाया? हाउ मच मार्क्स आई वाज गेटिंग? 40%, 50%, 60%. उन टॉपिक्स में भी कुछ इजी थे, कुछ डिफिकल्ट थे, तो क्या मैंने इजी क्वेश्चंस में 60% तक स्कोर किया या नहीं किया? ठीक है, बाकी जो छूट गया, फॉर दैट यू जस्ट वॉच द वीडियो, और जो आंसर मिल रहे हैं उसको चुपचाप पढ़ डालो. एक तरह से प्रिपरेशन है, रिवीजन हो गया. ठीक है, इससे क्या होगा, आगे का टेस्ट विल नॉट बी डिस्टर्ब्ड. ठीक है, आई रियली बिलीव कि टेस्ट सीरीज को यूज करने के लिए इट डिपेंड्स अपॉन योर स्टेज ऑफ प्रिपरेशन. सो इफ सपोज यू आर अ मेच्योर स्टूडेंट जिसका 3rd अटेम्प्ट है, 4th अटेम्प्ट है सपोज, एंड आपने सब कुछ प्रिपेयर कर लिया, तो देन यू हैव टू इम्प्रूव, बिकॉज यू नो कि प्रीवियस ईयर मेरे मार्क्स कम थे, तो मुझे आंसर राइटिंग में बहुत ज्यादा प्रैक्टिस करना है, एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा, तो तुम सारे टेस्ट लिखोगे. बट सपोज इफ यू आर अ फर्स्ट अटेम्प्टर, the more challenging issue for you is to complete the syllabus. And if I have to give priority, I'll give priority more to the ratification. आंसर तो सभी ने लिखा है यार, स्कूल में नहीं लिखते थे. कोशिश करूंगा कि थोड़ा आंसर राइटिंग कर लूं, उसमें भी टाइम नहीं मिल रहा है, तो आई विल डू मेंटल ब्रेनस्टॉर्मिंग, फ्रेम वर्किंग, दिमाग में फ्रेम वर्किंग करो. इवन व्हेन आई एम लाइंग डाउन, कोई खाली टाइम मिल रहा है, आई जस्ट लुक इनटू द क्वेश्चन, आई थिंक ओके इसमें क्या लिख सकता हूं. ठीक है, सो दैट इज बेसिकली व्हाट यू विल डू.
केस स्टडीज और एग्जाम्पल्स के कलेक्शन की बात है. जब हम मैगजीन पढ़ते हैं तो डिफरेंट टॉपिक्स, ऐसे न्यूज़लेटर की बात करें या कोई भी गाइडेंस आईएएस का न्यूज़लेटर है, या डाउन टू अर्थ मैगजीन पढ़ रहे हैं, या हम लोग कोई करंट अफेयर की मैगजीन ही पढ़ रहे हैं मंथली वाली, उसके उसमें पढ़ते हुए आपने जो केस स्टडीज उनका कलेक्शन किया, वो टॉपिक वाइज आपने एक मतलब एक पूरे सिलेबस को इस तरह से डिवाइड किया, आप उनको अलग अलग जगह लगाते गए, या आपने एक जगह लिखते गए. मेरा कहने का मतलब ये है कि अलग अलग टॉपिक्स वाइज आपने बना रखा है कहीं, उस तरीके से आपने सेग्रीगेट किया टॉपिक्स को, या आप एक जगह लिखते चले गए, फिर बाद में रिवीजन किया, फिर ऑटोमेटिक वो अप्लाई हो जाता है आंसर्स में.
नहीं, मैंने हमेशा केस स्टडीज जो हैं वो टॉपिक्स के नोट्स के साथ ही लिखी है, क्योंकि अगर वैसे कलेक्शन भी बनाया जा सकता है, बट आई फेल्ट कि अगर टॉपिक्स के साथ रखोगे तो कंसोलिडेट होगा, और व्हेन यू आर राइटिंग एन आंसर तो एक मेंटल इमेज आ जाती है कि आई हैड अ नोट ऑन दिस टॉपिक, माई पेज लुक लाइक दिस, माई पेज हैड सम एग्जाम्पल्स, सम केस स्टडीज, एंड देन it becomes very easy to replicate that same case study. So to have that mental image of that page of a note on which that topic you have covered, and have that consolidation of case study so that you can directly think and write that case study in the same question, same topic question. For that, I wrote the case studies in the same portion of the syllabus, not separate book.
Because this time I have prepared the notes online, means topic wise. So online में केस स्टडी में एडिंग करना, एडिटिंग करना, ऐसे आपने टॉपर्स की कॉपी देखी, वहां से कुछ एग्जाम्पल मिले, कुछ डायग्राम्स मिले, तो आप उनको सेग्रीगेट करना भी बहुत जरूरी है. आपने टॉपर्स की कॉपी देखी तो आपने उनमें से क्या क्या लेने चाहा, मतलब क्या ऑब्टेन किया.
टॉपर्स की कॉपीज में से काफ़ी सारे मैंने मैप्स कैसे बनाना है उसके बारे में सीखा. जैसे अगर एग्जांपल आता है कि व्हाट आर द टूरिस्ट डेस्टिनेशन या एयरपोर्ट कनेक्टिविटी और समथिंग, तो आई नेवर थॉट कि इन अ मैप ऑफ इंडिया यू कैन ड्रॉ टूरिस्ट डेस्टिनेशन and write the problems that Himalayan tourist destination are facing these problems, Western Ghats is facing these problems, Northeast is facing these problems. So I will make a map और वहीं पे मैं लिखता जाऊंगा. So this I learned through toppers copy. Similarly case studies मैंने कई toppers copy से उठाए, examples उठाए. तो ये जो चीजें हैं ये you read the toppers copies, you read the solution of tests, you read different uh, toppers copies of your peers, your friends, and then you will realize that they have written something else which you can also write and incorporate them into your notes of that particular topic.
और ऐसे पेपर टू की ऑप्शनल पेपर टू को GS1 और GS3 में जोग्राफिकल जो टर्मिनोलॉजी है उसको छोड़कर और स्कॉलर्स के नाम, जोग्राफर्स के नामों को छोड़कर हम सारी जो केस स्टडी है वहाँ भी अप्लाई कर सकते हैं. मतलब
हाँ कर सकते हैं. मतलब हालांकि GS1 और GS3 में केस स्टडीज का यूज मैंने टॉपर्स की कॉपीज में भी नहीं देखा है, तो रादर देन यूजिंग दैट होल केस स्टडी, क्योंकि वो बहुत सारी जगह ले लेता है और GS में देयर इज अ मेजर स्पेस क्रंच, सो यूज दैट एज अ स्मॉल एग्जांपल, वन लाइन एग्जांपल ऑफ दैट केस स्टडी. फॉर एग्जांपल you have a case study on landslide. Last year Chamoli flash floods happened. So I have prepared a case study on that Chamoli flash floods. You can write as a case study of 2-3 lines also. You can also mention one line Chamoli flash floods in this month in this in Uttarakhand. So this is how you will compress your case study and use it in GS answers, because space is the major problem, I think.
Can I add something?
S-
Discussing about case study so much, you don't forget what actually you have to write. Okay, case study will take you from 4 to 6 in a 10 marks question, but that 4 marks is your content. It can be as simple as that today, if you have read the newspaper, I can remember two headlines. One was Cherrapunji having the highest rainfall in this short duration, and northwest India not having rainfall till now. Monsoon has already come. So another news was related to how cyclone Amphan was created because of overheating and heat waves. As simple as this headline can be your case study, because there will be at some point of time a question why we are having so many severe cyclones and very severe cyclones, and this particular information which you incorporate, just a single line and a map कि अम्फान यहाँ पे हिट हुआ था, this is your case study. It is as simple as that.
केस स्टडी ऑफ अम्फान.
हाँ.
Yes.
Okay. There is one question one student is asking with respect to the interview. So both of you tell me what was specifically asked from geography optional or geography in your interviews.
I don't recall any very specific questions on geography, but some of the questions asked we do study in geography. For example, to me it was asked what is hydroponics. You know hydroponics. So what is hydroponics? Why is it not very successful in India? Why are the farmers not adopting hydroponics? So this is somewhat we study in geography. I cannot recall other questions from geography as such, because most of the questions, even if from geography, they were of GS kind. So optional preparation specifically for geography, they don't ask a lot of questions. But whatever you have prepared from mains perspective, it is more or less sufficient.
Sir, a direct question from optional wasn't asked, but a question was asked why do Indian students go to US and Britain to study and not to Nordic countries or Germany, because their education is also good. So here, if you're a GS student, you might wonder the reason, but when you study geography, you know the cultural reasons are there. English language is a common link there. Then structural factors you study, that visa regime is easier. So geography comes in handy in answering these questions in that way. Specifically, it won't be asked कि Davis का cycle of erosion समझाओ in interview, because that is already done in your mains.
So we have seen the tendency, like in geography, when they are asking from geography, they will ask more current affair related some questions they will be asking. Or second type of questions which they will be asking is that how geography will be helpful in your administration or something like these type of questions. A third category of questions are asked when there is a expert in the board sitting who has geography or some related environmental science. Then specific questions we find that some of the students have been asked, like for example, one of the students was asked about map projections. Okay, so that is specifically when there is someone with that kind of expertise in the board. Okay, otherwise generally what happens, they will not be asking so many questions from the optional. Okay. Any hmm.
This year, 2021, there were too many philosophical topics. So, did you use the geographical understanding in an essay? Or I did use examples from geography because I remember I attempted that question better to best. If essay on better, you are talking about essays, right? That last eighth number essay, better to best practices. So in that, I remember using examples of agriculture. A green revolution was a better practice at that time, but now we think of green revolution 2.0 or sustainable agriculture. So I used this example in my essay. I also used examples of industries which somehow we have learned in geography. So I think it's because we collect so many examples, we read so many different dimensions. I also remember using examples of geopolitical rimland or heartland. I directly did not mention rimland and heartland, but the same concept I used in my first part of the essay. So different concepts we learn and we can directly apply in essays because the subject is so wide and having multiple dimensions.
One of the students are asking that many students suggest that you should make synopsis notes. So did Pratik, you made synopsis notes?
Yes, sir. From my class notes and the printed material which we get, because I didn't use books, so the main source was that material. It was very huge and it cannot be revised in short span of time. And I believe that revision is a multiple time process. So for each topic, I had made as less as 15 to 20 pages, and highest I used to confine it in 40 pages. It included the static parts, the keywords, diagrams, which I will be seeing and going through before going to exam, and the case studies.
So whole geography syllabus, how many pages you would have made synopsis of? Like,
Sir, I don't have the exact number of pages because it was topic wise and I did it online on
okay,
OneNote.
okay. And what about you, Naman?
I have also made synopsis. The notes I was talking about after my mains of 2020, it was kind of a synopsis because I directly made those notes mainly from sir's classroom notes and some of the books. So those notes were very compressed. I always believed in making crisp and very brief notes so that I can first revise easily, quickly. Secondly, remember those notes because if we see sir's geomorphology notes, they'll be I think 300, 400 pages something. While my whole notes of geography optional from geomorphology to last chapter contemporary issues of paper 2, it is totally 400, 300, 300 to 400 pages. So this is what my synopses were. And I used to compress and write very brief, one line, one sentences topics on each and every topic. So this was my synopsis.
My suggestion from this about this is that once you are reading, first you read from the notes. Don't make synopsis notes in your first and second reading, because what happens when you make synopsis notes in your first and second reading, you don't remember so many things. So what will happen? You will begin to write almost everything. So many times it happens, students come to me and they show कि ये notes कैसा है कम pages में, and it is like font size उसका छोटा हो गया है सब कुछ. ठीक है, so that is not a synopsis notes. Synopsis notes contain only keywords. So as a student, I devised a method, and what was my method was, when I used to write my notes, for example, I always used to leave a space. So for each paragraph, I'll identify 4 5 keywords which will help me to remember the entire paragraph. So what I used to do is I used to write those keywords just on the side of that paragraph. Okay. With this, there was advantage that I will, even if I forget what was related with those keywords, the paragraph is just there only. So I can look back. Okay. So that fear was not there, and thus I was writing only the keywords. Later, what I did, I made a separate copy and I jotted those keywords in that separate copy. Once I was confident that all the links related to the keywords were there in my mind and I was able to recall them. Okay? So, this is one practical way you can make your synopsis notes, and it will be really very helpful. I firmly believe that there should be a proper synopsis notes, because then only what will happen, you will be able to utilize the time which will be like less as you move on in the preparation, and particularly those last 2 3 days which you are getting, few days in between the GS and the optional paper, that has also become crucial, very very crucial. Okay. Anyone else want to ask something? पीछे दे दो पीछे.
Hello, I'm Pramod. What was your specific approach for contemporary issues and political aspects? Because the geopolitical issues, and we are expecting some questions. So, what was your specific approach?
So contemporary issues is a most one of the more important but often neglected topic in paper 2, because everybody thinks that this will be a topic which if we even know from GS, and we don't have any particular source to prepare from this topic. But I think there are a lot of questions that are recently being asked from contemporary topics. So what I did was same. I, for each and every word mentioned in the contemporary topics, I had notes for that, and in my notes I had whatever I have already told. That note I would gather mostly from current affairs magazines, because most of the contemporary issues are anyway current affairs issues. So writing examples from current affairs magazines is very important, but also link it from geographical perspective. If the contemporary issues are disasters like earthquake, tsunami, volcano, etc. So link them with what you have studied in paper one. Link landslide with slope analysis of geomorphology, or volcanism with tectonic geomorphology, whatever concepts you remember. So link that, write that in the notes, and prepare notes for contemporary issues. That is very required because recently many questions are being asked. So that was my approach.
If you look into Dear Cooler has covered almost 50 60% of the contemporary issues. It is scattered in different chapters, but it is there. So basic material you'll find from the Cooler itself. You can add upon from the sources, newspapers, and internet, etc., etc. Okay.
And in paper too, it is highly dynamic. Were you able to? How are you managing the dynamism in paper two in the examination hall? I mean, very current oriented.
So I'll repeat this the third time. Everyone remembers now. For me, it was integrated. Like you talked about contemporary issues, and there are topics of food security, floods, and drought. So when you study those, study it together. When you study the magazine, when you read the newspaper, just remember that there is this topic in your syllabus. Like for example, a question came on the industrial corridor, south. I think it was South Industrial Corridor. You know, So you have that map in every magazine, be it Vision, Forum, every current affair magazine will have that map and information. So when you read that, just keep in mind that there is a topic in GS called infrastructure. There is a topic in your optional in contemporary issues as well as in transport geography. That industrial corridor development, how corridor development occurs, उसमें terminals add होते हैं तो कैसे so just remember the topics when you read the current affairs. So all dynamism is killed there.
Some of the dynamism also arises from the fact that very general questions are asked. If such a question is asked, why is the Northeast region backward? So it's a very general question. How would you answer, or where would you start? What points would you write? Because not only they could ask Northeast, they could ask Vidarbha region, they could ask Rajasthan, they could ask Central India, any region, islands of the country. So what you can always do is have your syllabus in mind, and there are 10 chapters in paper 2 in our syllabus, starts from physical settings, resources, agriculture, industry, trade, cultural settings, so on. So write a point or explain a point for each of these. If the question is asked that why is the Northeast region backward, start with physical settings. Northeast region, make a map. Northeast region has Himalayas, plateaus in Meghalaya, then floods from Brahmaputra. Terrain is unfavorable. Then go to resources, go to agriculture, shifting cultivation is done. Then trade transportation is difficult. We mostly have waterways. So you can cover each and every syllabus topic in such general answers, and then you will get good marks, because this is what is making your answer geographical. This is not a GS type of answer. This is a geographical answer because you are using the syllabus terms for geography. So this is how you can also tackle some of the very general questions in paper 2.
Okay, Naman, there is one question for you. You got very good marks in prelims and definitely 30-40 marks above the cutoff. So what you did for the prelims?
Uh, Prelims, I think, is not so much about, it is definitely about preparing content and having knowledge, but it is also about having the right mindset and the practice. So if I talk about the content, everybody knows what are the standard books to follow. I also followed the same standard books. I read Spectrum, I read Nitin Singhania CCRT website, Fine Arts NCRT. So this is the list which everybody knows, everybody follows. So this I would not get into. But what is more required is having the right mindset of solving those questions which are MCQs, which are tricky, which requires time management, elimination skills. So what I did was, number one, solve all the lot of previous year questions. A lot of previous year questions are attempted, are repeated. If you have given this year prelims, you would realize that banks, board, bureau, all of these questions were already asked. uh, that coalition of under two coalition, these were all previous year questions. So number one, do previous year questions, they would be repeated, and secondly, they would help you understand what is frequently asked. In economy, you would realize that macroeconomics topics are very frequently asked, and they would ask questions on exchange rate, GDP deflator, inflation. These questions are very, very common. Similarly, polity, some sections like fundamental rights are very common. So understand, in art and culture, Jainism, Buddhism is very common. So understand what is very commonly asked and prepare in great detail, especially those topics. Secondly, do a lot of mock tests. Mock tests not only help you in giving test or improving your content while seeing the answers, but it helps you in devising your elimination strategy. In both the prelims, I realized that most of the answers I didn't know, but most of the answers I know how to eliminate options. There would be some extreme options that you can eliminate. There would be some facts which seems to be wrong that you can eliminate. There are contradicting statements between two, which you can eliminate, and similarly, your own common sense says that this does not seem right, which you can eliminate. So this elimination techniques you learn while you give many mocks. I gave 40 mocks, 50 mocks both the times, and the marks also increased with mocks. Then I got stabilized into a comfortable range of marks in the mocks, and once you realize that you are getting stable marks in your mock, then you are good to go. You have good preparation for prelims. This was my mocks giving strategy. Revision is key because a lot of people prelims is very factual, and to remember that facts, it is very important to have that content revised multiple times. So I would say I revised each content within those 2 months of prelims preparation 5-6 times. Before giving mocks, I used to revise. I used to also make short notes for those content. I had short notes which are 3-4 pages of whole Lakshmikant. Similarly, 3-4 pages of whole spectrum. So those 3-4 pages I would read on the day of the examination in the morning, and I remember 2-3 questions were directly repeated from those very short notes I made, and I would probably not have remembered or recalled otherwise. So make short notes for revising towards the end, and I think this is what helps. Practice is very important, and I would finally emphasize on having the correct mindset. A lot of people get very tensed, anxious while giving the paper. I made sure I was confident. I tried to be as relaxed as like I'm giving a mock paper. And this really helped me get very good marks. If you are tensed, if you are anxious, if you are underconfident, you would not get very good marks in prelims, because it is about the mindset you are having in the examination and not so much about the knowledge you are having in the examination. So this comes through practice. You have to practice. You can also meditate, play sports, whatever, but have calm and composed mindset during the examination. It really helps. So this was my strategy for prelims.
I used to convince myself that I am very lucky, and whatever I was not very well prepared, it would not come in the examination. So that used to help me a lot. One very good question has been asked. When we are writing that optional paper, there are lots of, there are choice questions. So, how to make sure that your choice of questions is correct? Hmm.
Uh, Firstly, don't go with a predetermined mindset that you will only attempt physical geography or human geography. You would not attempt 2 questions from the other section. So this was one thing. Secondly, read all the questions in the first 5 minutes or 5 to 6 minutes that you get. And what I did was I would use to write how much marks I expect in this question. So I would write for 10 marker that I expect 3 marks in this question, I expect 4 marks in this question, I expect 5 marks in this question. So 10 marks you have to necessarily attempt, sorry. For optional, I would write, I would expect 6 marks in this question, I would expect 7 marks, 8 marks, and so on. And finally, after reading all the questions, giving myself a marks to myself that if I write this question, I probably knows this much. I probably would write this much, and I would expect to get this much marks. So I write 6, 7, 8 marks, whatever I was expecting in that question, and at the end I would choose based on how many marks I've given to all these questions. So this was my strategy. You can try that in the mock paper to identify if that works for you, but this really worked for me, and I attempted. Sir was telling that you should attempt question number 2 uh, and 6 and 8 this year, and I attempted the same questions because I was strongly prepared on them. Sir's notes really helped. They were the questions were directly from there, and I also gave myself good marks on those questions in the initial review which I did. So based on that, I attempted.
What about you, Pratik?
Sir, I have bought my paper to show. Poor files in.
Fine.
So, first thing first, predetermined mindset is very dangerous because there can be a very tough question and you have to skip it. And then second is after 1 and 5, after reading 1 and 5, you when you see the questions 2, 3, 4 and then thereon, there will be some questions जो नहीं आता है and there will be some questions जो आता है. Then it is about if getting the maximum out of those questions. So जो नहीं आता, you have, I used to just cross it. I have put a small cross over 4C because I didn't know, or I thought that 2C could be written better than 4C. So in that way, at the end of the this process, ticking and crossing, I was left with 4 and I had to choose 3. And then I went with my gut feel that this would be written better by me, and I have maps prepared for these because content you have prepared, always you read so much, there will be content for all the questions. Somewhat you can write, तीन में से एक पेज भर जाएगा, but your gut feeling that preparation of examples and case study, maps, diagrams is what will increase your marks. So on basis of that, I used to decide, and I took a pencil before, so I used to do it with a pencil on the paper. If anyone wants to see, it's there.
What I have found many times, what happens, students are choosing the questions wrong, and what they do is they rush in choosing the questions. They'll see one keyword which they would have studied, and just what they'll do, they'll tick and they'll choose the that question. Another mistake which many students I found they did was they were not looking into all the three questions. Like for example, they knew first question which was 20 marker well, but other two they were not so much prepared. There was another question in which their preparation was almost equal and overall fine for all the three questions. So they chose the one which had where they were very strong in that 20 marker, but 15 markers again, two 15 markers were not so much good. Okay, so this type of mistakes definitely has to be stopped. You don't have to do these mistakes. You have to, when you're choosing the questions, you brainstorm in your mind. That is what am trying to always teach in 500 plus classes, even in the optional classes. When I give 2 minutes to the students to brainstorm, सब इधर उधर बातें करने लगते हैं, time waste करते हैं. But actually those 2 minutes are very crucial. If you can reduce this time of 2 minutes to 30 seconds, and you can reach a stage where you are not using the pen, you are doing the same activity in the mind, you'll see that how much that would improve your essentially the examination preparation and everything, choice of question, everything will be improved. So that is something which has to be very very clearly done. Okay, so I think uh, it is already time, काफी time हो गया, 2 घंटे हो गए, और 2 घंटे काफी होते हैं. So from tomorrow morning itself we are starting the 500 plus classes. So tomorrow if you want to come, I will allow first class open कर दूंगा. ठीक है, so those who want to attend physically, you can come and attend. We'll allow the first class. ठीक है, you see what we are doing, how we are doing. It would be definitely, those who haven't seen, you'll see that kind of eye opening and basically how we do that. ठीक है. So before I just stop, I would like both of them, Pratik also, I'd like to congratulate them again. And before we just stop, I'll, if they have any message for the students, final message. Hmm.
Uh, One thing that I think a lot of geography optional aspirants do think, and I also thought that this optional is not so scoring. People are not getting good ranks. This optional is vast. There is inconsistency in marks. So all of these are myths. These are not true. See the list behind me. There are so many people in top 100 ranks. Optional, the highest score is even par or better than other optional. So never think that this optional is not rewarding or this optional does not perform good. There is no such thing. If you write good answers, the optional will perform good. You will get good marks. That is the only logic. And if you practice, if you follow the right strategy, there is no one who can stop you from getting good marks in this optional. So I also got this same doubt after my first attempt, but then I was very focused. I was very interested in this subject. I liked this subject, read it wholeheartedly, and that really helped me increase my marks from 208 to 272. So this is my message. Devote yourself and do complete justice and preparation while you are preparing for this optional.
I would like to say that my optional journey started from right behind that pillar I used to sit, and I never spoke to anybody in the class. I didn't go to sir. Whenever I used to read, I had this in mind, like from the beginning. I had no base in geography. Whenever I used to read, I had this in mind that क्यों पढ़ रहा हूँ मैं ये चीज. Because sometimes when you read things, you find interest or you don't find interest and you do it for the sake of doing it. But purpose driven things where you are setting targets and achieving it on a daily basis, like I have attempted once only mains and I have got satisfactory marks, so I won't get into the debate of geography not rewarding or not, because I did my first trial and I got it. So just keep doing your work every day, keep targets for yourself, small targets, keep fulfilling it. Be driven by the purpose why you are here, be driven by those previous year questions which syllabus which you analyze, and other than that everything else is irrelevant. Because in market there will always be a new book, there will always be a new teacher, always be a new course with catchy names of courses like this program or that program, and this will cause you anxiety. So stay away from all those things, be satisfied with what you have and just do that things multiple times. You will hear other people also saying this, that do things multiple times because it works. If there is something common in those 653 people selected, it is only this thing that they did things multiple times. That's all, because there will be 653 strategy in market today. So my background is I did civil engineering from BITS Pilani in Hyderabad. In 2019, I graduated, and in 2019 itself, I started preparing. 2020 first attempt, I didn't clear prelims. I scored 60. 2021 was this attempt where I doubled my prelim score, 120, and I got this rank. Anything detail you can ask me.
Okay, friends, so we'll stop for today. As I told you, the 500 plus class, which is starting tomorrow, it will be open, and it will also be there on YouTube. Okay, so those of you who want to watch online, you can definitely watch and see how the classes will be going on. Okay.